What is up, everybody, and welcome to Studio de Jeffrey, Studio de Dane, Studio de Broaddus. It is Plug and Play episode 3, an NFL draft show. I'm so tempted to say podcast, but we're on video. So it's an NFL draft show for your earballs and your eyeballs as we're getting ready for the NFL Combine. My name is Jeff Cavanaugh, and the sentence just ends there. Normally, I would say from a certain place. I'm Jeff Cavanaugh, and I'm from right here. This is where I'm from. And I am joined, as I am every week, every Wednesday at 7:30, by the great Bryan Broaddus, the greatest drafter in the history of the NFL. Man ran one draft, got 4 Pro Bowlers, and the man who was going to dethrone him until he decided, you know what? I want my work to be accessible to everyone, and I want to have 737 kids. The great Dane Brugler from The Athletic. So good evening, gentlemen, as we are on the eve of the Combine and fired up to see where this thing is headed. How we doing, Dane?
We're doing good. Yeah, it's weird this year. Everything's a week later. So because the extra game in the regular season, so Super Bowl's later, Combine's a week later, and so we're almost to March now. So we're getting closer and closer to the draft.
Yes, and it is glorious. Bryan, how are you? You're looking good. You're looking swell.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Jeffrey. As always, I enjoy being with 2 of my favorite draft guys as we get this thing going. So I'm excited. I'm disappointed missing a combine. Never want to miss a combine, but sometimes other duties call. But I'm grateful to have the opportunity to talk about it with you guys.
Like when you have to go to the bathroom. Sometimes that duty calls, and that's why we have 3 people on this show, so that if I do have a bowel movement, I can just throw it to you guys and disappear, and I'll come back, and it'll all be good. Mm-hmm. So tonight, my plan is, it goes this far. Plan number 1, we talked about Dane's top 100 last week, but not all the position groups. And everybody's like, well, you didn't really give me 1 through 100. That's because you have to subscribe to Dane's work on The Athletic, and you can get 1 through 100. We'll give you some of it, but you have to subscribe. So I did want to go over the defensive tackles that we didn't get to last week, all of them, because I think it's a fascinating position group. But as previously stated, we are creeping up on the Combine, where a bunch of dudes are going to make a bunch of money. Maybe you could lose money. And Bryan will tell you which part is the most important. So will Dane. But that may not be the most exciting part for everybody. So as we get ready for this, let's start with you, Dane. What is most important? And then, Bryan, you go, that's right. Dane nailed it. Dane's got this thing nailed. And then some of the guys we're looking forward to see what they can do.
Yeah, it's the whole reason the Combine was invented in the first place, and that's the medicals. It's a central location for all these prospects. There's 324 this year headed to Indy to get the full medical evaluation. And I don't think we talk enough about just not only the importance, but how rigorous of a process it is. All 32 teams have their team doctors and trainers and staff there to really get everything. If this guy had a knee his freshman year of high school, they're going to check it out. They're going to figure it out. What exactly is going on? So no stone left unturned when it comes to the medicals. And that's really where we have the biggest fluctuation at this point in the process, is when we find out, I'll get a text from Bryan or a call from Bryan. It's not good. It's not good. No, I was talking to him. He's got the knee and then the shoulder. It's not good. It's not good.
Talking to my gang of 7, Dane. I was talking about, I got to tell you, I'm hearing from, I'm not going to say a city name. I'm hearing from, and it's not good. I do want to stop down for 2 seconds before, Bryan, you talk about getting ready for this Combine, and thank Manhawk in the chat. Now,
That's
my
crazy,
my formatting screws up if I click the button and put it on the screen. But for one, I am willing to do it one time. What? Holy cow. What a generous, freaking awesome dude. Thank you for your support. Thank you for being here.
Appreciate you, man. Really do.
And Dane, you're responsible for remembering names, so thank you to Crushing Bedtime. And he wants to know about Cam Taylor-Britt being a free safety, which I will not be just inserting all of the super chats all the time as we try to stay on topic, but towards the end, I'll ask if you guys have anything that you want, and we'll rock and roll. And everybody that supports, we do love you. So, Bryan, Combine, medicals, what's going on with the knee? What do we got?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is we all go eat beer can chicken the night at the Weber Grill before we get out of town. No, a great tradition, a lot of great traditions at the combine for us as we used to go and handle all that. The When we were starting to talk about boycotts of the combine and with agents and the top, the top players, 150, whatever that number was, the one thing that I was scared of was the medical stuff. I was really scared of that. And then I reached out to a team about about that. And they said, listen, it doesn't sound like it's going to be a problem with the medicals. They're going to boycott workouts and potentially interviews and stuff like that. And then I asked about, well, what about, the 30 visits if they boycott, the league was like looking at possibilities of maybe having to expand that number, but cooler heads prevailed. We're going to have our workouts. We're going to be able to get our numbers. We're going to be able to get our interviews and then our medicals. And it's always to me been about the medical stuff, because especially with this day and age, with the HIPAA laws the way they were, there was a time where Krusty could go in to a school and I could request Randy Moss's medical information from Marshall University, and they would hand me his complete medical file. And that was it. I would move on to my next school, but I don't have that opportunity anymore. And so those medicals are super, super important. I think the interviews for a lot of these guys, because we've been in a pandemic era, guys, the last couple of years, scouts going to schools. Do we get to talk to these kids? No, we really don't. Do we get to talk, do you get to visit with them? No, there's times where you used to be able to go to practice and watch them and do all these things. Some of that's changed, but there's still those schools that say, listen, we don't want you guys around. So the combine, again, great opportunity, much as the Senior Bowl was, to get to sit down and visit with these kids and get an opportunity to talk with them. Give me an idea what makes them tick. But also, like I said, I need to know that medical stuff, because when I put your tag on the board, I want to be able to say with total confidence as our scouts are saying, hey, that's our guy. That's our guy. And I think that the combine cleans up a lot of that stuff for us.
So now, as we're actually getting ready for it, what are the most interesting storylines, or maybe the guys to watch? Because I know, like, every year Bruce Feldman comes out with his freaks list. Mm-hmm. I'm sure it's a bunch of information that Dane's probably already gotten about like how some of these guys are testing going into their junior or senior year or whatever in college. And so now it's going to be on display, where I've seen claims that like both the Michigan guys are going to run a 6.63 cone. And who are the guys that were about to be tuned into the combine and going, oh, wow?
Well, I think you mentioned Michigan. Aiden Hutchinson, his day's going to start kind of rough, because I think he's not as long as people think. I think his arm length is going to be shorter, and so his day's going to start a little rough, and then it's going to get better really quickly. His agility stuff is going to be remarkable. Aiden Hutchinson's going to only maybe confirm why some people have him as a top player in this draft, including myself. So he's going to look good. David Ajabo from Michigan will look good. Tell you, the Washington corners, both of them, Trent McDuffie, Kyler Gordon, these guys are going to test off the charts. I was on the phone with Trent earlier today, and he was telling me about what he wants to run in the 4.3s. He thinks, that's how he's been training. His goal in the vertical is 42.5. I mean, this is what he's been hitting in training. So he's going to hit it, and he's got some friendly bets going with his teammate Kyler Gordon about who's going to run faster, who's going to jump higher. And the thing with Trent, too, is he's going to just nail the interview process. He's going to nail the combine. We might be talking about Trent McDuffie as CB1 in this draft. Some teams will look at him that way. So look for both Washington corners to really show out. And then if you're going to ask me who's going to run the fastest 40, I've got two names for you. Tariq Woolen from UTSA, Senior Bowl guy, former wide receiver, 6'3", 205, should run somewhere in the low 4.3s. And then Kalen Barnes from Baylor. This guy in high school set the Texas record with a 10.08 100 meters. Now, Jeff, you're a track guy. 10.08. That's pretty good, right?
Yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah, back in my day, I could churn out 100 for right around 11 seconds, and I was fast.
That's moving.
Relatively speaking, I was fast compared to normal humans. But no, that's absurd. 10.08 when in high school?
Senior year of high school, set the Texas record.
That's stupid.
Yeah.
That's not.
The only reason it wasn't a national record is because
Tailwind.
Yeah, it was wind. They said wind aided, but even with just a little bit of wind, we're still talking about ridiculous time.
Bryan, do you have combine guys that you're looking at it?
If I could follow up again, like Dane was talking about, I visited with some scouts about the combine going in, and especially about the Washington kids. And one scout told me, don't be surprised if McDuffie measures in less with the height. There might be some questions about really how tall he is. And we'll see if that affects how people think about him. You can watch the tape, and it's outstanding tape. To a man, guys were talking about, hey.
Are we talking like 5'9"?
They're talking that he could be shorter than 5'10". They're talking like that.
There's two things working against him. The size, he's not a big guy, and then ball production wasn't there. But no one threw at him, so that factors in as well.
Yeah, but the guy's a hell of a football player. I mean, you can watch the tape and see that. But to a man, everybody's like, hey, McDuffie. You watch Gordon play? And there's to a man, it seemed like that everybody was kind of gravitating towards Kyler Gordon being the better of the players over there. Like that he was the one that was, you could talk about this kid, but Gordon that looked like to them that he was going to be the guy that people aren't giving nearly enough credit to.
He's the better athlete. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
He's a freak. He's going to test like a freak. Better player. I struggle with that.
Yeah, that's we're all looking at these guys in a different way and stuff. But a guy told me, like he said, hey, keep an eye on McDuffie and how tall he really measures.
Okay.
And, that might send a little bit of some reverberations through the combine as that measurement's fired off.
Okay, now tell me what you think of those two players, Bryan. Because I hear that, and like I love it that both of you have so many contacts that we can hear what different people think. But like to me, Trent McDuffie is going to be a top 15 or so player, and Kyler Gordon for me is going to be like a third round guy.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Kyler Gordon, though, is like he can line up at either corner and he can play the slot. He did it against Stanford. I was watching. They play a ton of off coverage. You see that with Washington in the way they scheme that. But, man, he gets really, really square at the snap, and then he turns those hips and he's able to adjust and all that. And so the movement stuff, I mean, the relaxed, the way he plays, the steady pedal, I mean, he appears to have like the ball skills. I know Dane was talking about that, but he was talking about McDuffie. I kind of felt like Gordon had a little bit, maybe some better ball skills. The California game, he had a couple of interceptions in that game, but the tackling part of it, we'll see. When he misses, a guy misses pretty bad, but athletically, I mean, I think you're talking about two outstanding corners here. But the thing with Gordon, I think he's a little bit of more of a grabby type of guy. So that's kind of where it made me think, the other guy, McDuffie, a little bit more natural playing it. Gordon maybe having to kind of hold on a little bit and stuff like that. I mean, he was able to get away with that in the Oregon game. I thought there was a couple of times where that happened to him. He wouldn't call for it, but man, both these kids have a lot of the skills that you absolutely want in these corners. I'm just pointing out, though, again, I have McDuffie higher. I'm just saying that maybe when we get the measurement, the actual height of McDuffie, that maybe people might see him a little bit different than we have in the past with some of these corners.
One more thing I'll say about these Washington corners is you have to be smart to play in that scheme. They put a lot on those guys' plates where you're changing based on the offensive formation, you're changing what you're doing. And Trent was running me through it today, just all the different double plays they have. And it makes your head spin with what you have to do and all the thinking you have to do on the fly based off of what the offense is showing you, based on the situation, down and distance and everything. And so I think that's something that will help both of those guys. Washington, talk about a defensive back factory. That's what they've been, and they're going to continue to do that with both these guys. I wouldn't be surprised if both these guys are first-round picks. I'm more with Jeff in terms of where I have Kyler Gordon, but when
I'm the same way. I'm the same
right.
way.
But
I'm just saying, yeah.
After he puts up these numbers, he's going to go. He's going to go high, right? Somewhere in the top 40 picks, probably first round.
Yeah, like I say, just keep an eye on that what the true measurement is of that kid. That was something I was alerted to by a couple of guys in the league.
Is there anything else we need to hit as far as combine preview?
Yeah, can I throw something out too? I'm really interested to see really what Linderbaum weighs. I'm really interested to see what that number is. No, just
I'll be 305, and after they weigh him, they go 305 Linderbaum, and he throws up two middle fingers and goes, "That's for Broaddus."
Yeah, and and I'd be happy to accept that too. There's a couple of centers in this draft. I mean, Parham from Memphis weighed in big. It's funny at the he weighed in bigger at the Senior Bowl. And I tell you what, that's good. I'm okay with these kids weighing more. I'm just interested to see. I'm interested to see how much cross the offensive tackle weighs. There's a couple of these offensive linemen that I'm interested to see from the end of the season to where we are at the combine. Did they go to some of these facilities? Did they train at their schools? Did they put on weight? Did they put on strength? Those are the kinds of things that I think that as a scout, you want to feel a little bit better about, because you watch Parham play and you can watch him go against Logan Hall from Houston and hold his own, but he's a 285-pound guy there, So, I mean, if you can, those are the kinds of things for just scouts. If the measurements come back, maybe what you think they could be, I think scouts feel a lot better about those when they actually see them and hear them.
Yeah, Linderbaum, I think I'll be surprised if he's more than 295. That's who he is, and that's fine. And we've talked about it before. He's not going to be for everybody. He's a center only. He's zone scheme only, and that could work out to the benefit to a team like the Cowboys picking in the later portion of round one. But yeah, I think there's plenty of different storylines here. I think Matt Corral for Ole Miss, the quarterback. We saw all the other quarterbacks, relevant quarterbacks at the Senior Bowl. This is Matt Corral's chance to say, hey, this is why I'm quarterback one. And I think he should show out. Everything he does is quick. His feet, his arm. And so I think in shorts and a T-shirt, he's going to look really good. Some of these running backs, I want to see how Kenneth Walker from Michigan State, how he catches the ball in the backfield. Wasn't asked to do that a ton. These wide receivers, it's going to be – we're going to see some big numbers from like Chris Olave. He's going to low 4.3s. I expect big numbers from him. Is that going to help him a little bit? Garrett Wilson, probably more mid 4.4s. I still think Garrett Wilson's the better prospect, but the wide receivers will be interesting. Traylon Burks. What's his weight? Is he 225? Is he closer to over 230? His hands, are they 11 and a half? I've heard so many different stories about how big his hands are. So that'll be interesting with him. I think you hit on a lot of the offensive linemen that are going to be interesting. Charles Cross being one of them, Evan Neal, Ike Ekwonu. All these offensive line will be interesting. So, yeah, there's a lot of cool storylines with the combine that, we look forward to every year. And this year definitely have some more.
I'll finish this up too, Jeff, if I could. And, you and I had a discussion on the draft show yesterday, or actually Tuesday, about Ed Ingram from LSU and then Zion Johnson from Boston College. If it holds true to how these guys work out, they usually put them in alphabetical order. So H, I, J, maybe we'll have a deal where you have, and this is what's kind of fun. If you have two players that are pretty close and you want to kind of compare, you watch one work and then the other works right behind it. So keep an eye on those combinations that we might see, especially at that guard spot, with, again, Ed Ingram and Zion Johnson potentially working, unless I'm missing something. But that would be something I want to keep an eye on too.
And I want to see Jordan Davis. Does he break 5 seconds in the 40? At 350, he's got he can move. He's got a chance to get under 5 seconds in the 40-yard dash. And I mean, it really doesn't matter, but it'll just be fun to watch.
That would be, because then like a whole different conversation is going to start. But that's it. Okay, so that's a great transition, because we've been working through, last week we were talking about, Dane, your top 100 on The Athletic, where you can subscribe and you can read it. And the defensive tackle group we didn't really get to, and we were getting towards having been on for an hour, and I was just like, all right, let me just pocket this bad boy, because the interior defensive line guys in this draft class to me is really unique because Jordan Davis, I think for some people, maybe a lot of people, will be the number one defensive tackle because there's not a dominant pass rushing defensive tackle that is a clear-cut, kick-ass prospect. And so we may have a one technique, be the first defensive tackle off the board. So as you were putting together your top 100, how tough was it to get them in order? And you ended up with D tackle 1 and D tackle 2 coming from the same school. And I'll say again, you can have both of them if I can have their D tackle next year. I'll take Jalen Carter, number 88.
Yeah, no, I don't blame you. And I went with Devontae Wyatt, the 3 technique, over Jordan Davis, the nose tackle, in my top 100 in my defensive tackle rankings. But it comes down to, what you're looking for. We talk about it like with receivers and with some of these other positions, they play basically 2 different positions. So even though we rank them in the same bucket, they're essentially 2 very different players with the role that they'll have at the next level and what teams will be looking for. We've talked about it with the Cowboys before, how they will not draft a nose tackle in the first round. And that seems to be an organizational philosophy, not just a coach specific thing. But who knows? Maybe one day they'll change that, and we'll all be surprised. But a lot of teams think that way because you can get Travis Jones from UConn in the second round. You could get Neil Farrell from LSU in the third or the fourth. You can get these bigger guys who are rotational noses. Unless you get a Vita Vea who has ascended to being just a total ass kicker as a nose and just going to beat you up, and he can play 3 downs. He can play a lot of snaps. So if you can find a Vita Vea, then, salute. But Vita Veas just aren't out there. Jordan Davis is not a Vita Vea, in my opinion, at least. So this defensive tackle class, there's a lot of different types of defensive tackles. I think what the guys at the Senior Bowl did, I thought really helped them. Travis Jones, Perrion Winfrey, John Ridgeway, I'd throw him in there too from Arkansas. So I agree, Jeff. This is at first glance, I thought defensive tackle might have been one of the weakest positions this year, and it's still probably middle of the road. It's not, one of the better positions, but it's still a group where there's talent. You can get better on your defensive tackle depth chart this year.
Yeah, I totally agree with Dane. I mean, if you look at the guys, like you mentioned, Mathis from Alabama, I really like him a lot, and what he potentially can bring. The whole thing with Travis Jones, I mean, that's the one guy to me, you go back, like you sent me the Clemson tape and stuff like that. I mean, played a lot better in that football game. It just depends on what you want. I mean, if somebody thinks like that they just need that big bodied, in the middle of that board in the first round, need a guy like Jordan Davis, if that's your missing piece on defense, I could see it 2 down or not. That is a big man that's hard to move. And I think Dane was right when he said earlier, we're going to see a guy potentially run like 4.94, and everybody's going to lose their damn mind about that, and they're going to talk about, and they're going to follow him, and he's probably going to, maybe the vertical, the broad or something, maybe the shuttle beat, but you're talking about a guy that big, and we've all watched the tape of Georgia. I mean, every one of those, it doesn't matter whether they're wearing white jerseys or red jerseys, those guys are flying to the damn ball, and that's a team that tackles well. They play well on defense. I mean, that's why we're talking about all their guys. And Jordan Davis is a big, big part of that. And I could see somebody saying, you know what? We need a big, mean guy in the middle of our defense, whether it's for 2 downs, 3 downs, 4 downs, whatever. He sure has got everybody's attention.
Well, if you could, here, let me ask you guys both this. And have you done John Ridgeway from Arkansas yet?
He's next on the list because I'm working down through that stuff, Dan, the list that you and I were kind of, and Ridgeway was right in the next of those defensive tackles that I needed to see. I've heard some really, really good things. I know some people who are watching this broadcast right now have been mentioned about him. I'm kind of seeing the chat on the side a little bit, but he's a guy you definitely have to look at.
What I was going to say is if you tell me I can have either Jordan Davis in the first or Ridgeway in the third, I'm going Ridgeway in the third. And I feel a lot better about that, about who else I'm getting in the first. And I feel good about, upgrading my defensive tackle position. So it'll be fascinating with Jordan Davis. I would not be shocked at all if he fell to the second round. I could easily see him going in the teens, just because a team will, especially when the coaches get involved, they see a guy like that who can impact the run game like Jordan Davis can. But yeah, he's almost got a bigger or as big of a variance as Tyler Linderbaum in terms of where he could end up on draft day.
Is there any way, I don't mean to cowboy it up too much, but is there any way that this thing could fall where at 24 you would think that a defensive tackle was a good pick for the Cowboys?
Well, I mean, Devontae Wyatt, I think, should be in the conversation. I mean, I don't. You guys can speak more towards like the Cowboys and 3 technique, and I don't, with Gallimore filling that role.
Gallimore being out all year. I mean, and he came back, and it was like one game, and then the rest of the time there wasn't really Neville Gallimore. And I mean, again, that's I don't think you could be the Dallas Cowboys and think, oh, we're set at 1. Oh, we're set at 3. I don't know how you can. I don't know how. I mean, you have names, you have bodies, and hopefully can Gallimore those guys. Oso Odighizuwa, I think, had moments. Bohanna was a non-factor. I mean, they've got bodies and names. I think they just need to get better there. So to say they couldn't use a 1 or a 3, I don't know how you say that at all.
So, and this is just one of those things. It's more of an overarching thing for every team at every position where like you look at the Cowboys and, for instance, 3 technique where you have Neville Gallimore, you have Tristan Hill, and that's what, a 2 and a 3? Is that right? Gallimore was a 3?
Gallimore was a 3, yeah.
Okay, so like you've got a 2nd rounder there, and you've got a 3rd rounder there, and Oso Odighizuwa is a 3rd rounder, and it's like, all right, that's 3 guys with 2nd and 3rd round picks.
Right.
And so as an organization, I'm sure you'd look at it and be like, dude, like we got guys. Yeah. But until one has shown you that he is not a guy, he's a dude, you should be ready to fire at any position.
Right.
If you don't already know that, like, okay, that guy, like he's got it. We're in great shape. Kind of sucks, but you're like, yeah, okay, we used a 2 and a 3 and a 3, and we're about to fire another one. Yeah. But you can't, it's like a sunk cost thing, right? Where it's like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you've already spent. If the best player is at that spot, you take him.
Yeah.
But I also don't think that any of these guys are going to be the best player available when you get to 24. So I'm not too terribly concerned about it.
Yeah, I'd agree. Wyatt was my top defensive tackle, and he was like 28 or something like
27.
that.
Yeah, he was 27. Jordan Davis was 28. I think you had Travis Jones in the 40s.
Yeah.
And then Winfrey maybe in the 50s, the Oklahoma guy.
Leal's in there somewhere.
Yeah, he was at like 51.
Yeah.
Leal's going to be one of the really interesting ones, man. Speaking of the combine, if he's working out, I'm very interested to see, because if he tests like a freak and it's like, oh, there's so much good in there. Why isn't it consistently great on tape?
Well, and what'll he weigh at? Because that'll tell you what he's thinking in terms of, does he see himself as a D end? Does he see himself as a 3? That'll be interesting to just the weigh-ins to see what he comes in at, and that'll be telling.
Let me change something real quick here, if I could. Do you think the Cowboys, we're talking about all these defensive linemen, do you think if the Cowboys took anything other than an offensive lineman, these fan base would lose their mind?
I hope not, because it's just like we've seen, right? Like mock drafts are, they're exercises, right? And we'll talk about a bunch of them that we see because it's fun.
Yeah.
To me, it's fun, right?
I'm totally open. I've loved the fact the last couple of years we've seen a really open mind about their board. I just wonder because, the fans, I know when we do our shows, Jeff, and stuff, I mean, everybody talks about offensive line.
Right.
And here we are talking about defensive line, which is an absolute need, which is absolutely, and especially what happens, it might even turn into defensive end might be a need, depending on what happens with Randy and Tank and all that stuff, if you're a Cowboy fan. But
I think so. My thing about this is like, yes, in a perfect world, I kind of want them to pick an offensive lineman, and this is where I was going with the mock draft things, because they can go a million different ways. One we do the other day has no wide receivers taken yet, 0, but Tyler Linderbaum is gone. Kenyon Green is gone. Zion Johnson is gone. Penning, Iquanu, Neal, Cross are all gone. You're not forcing an O-line pick there.
No.
You're going to pick the best player because you're trying to win at football.
I agree.
And the other thing too, I really like this interior offensive line class outside of the first round. I love Kenyon Green. I love Zion Johnson. Both those guys should be in the conversation at 24. But I tell you what, I look at my board in the second, third, fourth round. I've got a lot of interior offensive linemen there that I like, that I think have a chance to be starters in this league. So it's not one of those situations where I think they have to do it. If a corner's there, if say a Dax Hill is there, whatever, I mean, I think they can feel good that offensive line will stretch, that they can address it second, third, fourth round.
All right, now we go to some of the people. Cookie Monster wants to know, and he just said about the lineman from Fordham, which if there is one, I'm sure Dane knows who he is.
Nick Zakel. He's the left tackle, but he was a guard at the Senior Bowl. So, and he got beat up pretty good. You could tell he was not used to seeing that type of speed, that type of power. Yeah.
Not one of those 7 blocks of granite from Fordham is what,
No, yeah, well, the school in the Bronx there, yeah, they don't. The Patriot League, they don't have guys like Travis Jones and Perion Winfrey and those types of guys. But no, he's a tackle. He's going to move to guard in the NFL. I think he moves really well. I really like his awareness that he plays with. It's just he needs to be more consistent with his fundamentals, and it's going to take time for him until he's ready to face NFL competition. So to me, he's more of a mid to late round pick, a guy that you consider drafting somewhere in the 5th to 7th rounds.
Luis just wants JC Jackson on the team, and JC, we don't got no money, so that's going to be a problem. I'd like to thank J. Brandon Singh for contributing to the broadcast. You're a monster. Darren, Georgetown, you as well. Thank you. Now I want to get to the guy who he said, I want to twist Bryan's brain in a pretzel. Would you trade your 1 and your 2 to draft a falling Charles Cross in the top 15? Charles Cross is making his way into the teens, and your 1 and 2 in theory will get you there. You do it?
I'm kind of at the point where I think I'm the only one on this panel that is in love with Charles Cross. Am I correct about that? Is it?
Well, only because your definition of is in love is that you have him as OT1. I got 3 that I really like.
Yeah, I'll tell you this to answer the gentleman's question. I was willing to take Amari Cooper, trade him in the 24. So I've basically given 24 and Amari Cooper to get to the Jets at 10 if I knew I could get Cross. I'm going for one of those offensive tackles. I might be going for I might be going for Hamilton if something was going on there. But the only reason I was going up was I was going to go get one of those offensive tackles. That's the only way. Because if that was the case, I was going to take Lyle Collins and plug him in at left guard and put that drafted tackle at right tackle. And then when something happens with Tyron Smith, I'll move him over the other side and then I'll elevate, Terrence Steele. But yeah, I mean, if I'm willing to give the Jets 24 and Amari Cooper, which I think would get me a 2nd round pick, I would do that for Cross. I think he's that good.
Easy?
No, I don't think it's easy. Just you hate to give up that 2nd round pick, but it would be tough to say no to go get a guy that you is going to be a plug and play starter and a guy that's going to take the baton from Tyron. And one of my good buddies in this business, Brandon Thorne, who's awesome with offensive line evaluations. People need to check out his work if you don't already. He actually comped Charles Cross to a young version of Tyron Smith. That type of ability. When you talk about the athleticism, you talk about the hand exchange, the movement patterns. Now, with Cross, I do worry a little bit about the lack of power, especially in the run game. Coming from that air raid offense, Mike Leach's offense, I think there's some question marks there. But I think, he's going to be a dynamite pro. And I think when you've got a guy with that type of foot quickness, and again, for a guy that's still young, he's 21 years old. He's just a redshirt sophomore. His hand exchange, his hand technique, it's just so impressive. So, the more I talk about him, the more I feel more comfortable with making a trade like that.
It's funny. I used to hate offensive tackles that played without power. And then I became wrong about David Bakhtiari coming out of Colorado. And every time I said, oh, this tackle's light. Now, Nate Soldar won a Super Bowl. He was a Colorado guy. Another one guy that went, New England drafted him, went to the Giants. He's been a bust. He doesn't play with power. But every time I ever said, guy doesn't play with power, he ends up playing like 10 damn years in this league. I think I've learned my lesson about that. If you're a really, really, really good athlete, I think, especially when you talk about hand exchange, footwork, all that stuff, I think you could find a way. I mean, and I'm not just saying, I know he's a first round pick, but when you start talking about the comparisons to Tyron Smith, and we do all remember Tyron Smith coming out and being like 290 pounds coming out of USC, and then he got, he put on weight. But if you got the athlete, the hand exchange and all that, you know what, to me, if I'm going up, it's probably for one of those offensive tackles. It's probably not for anything else.
We got multiple people throwing Amari Cooper's name in the hat since, Bryan, you mentioned trying to use him to trade up. Trade Guru just said, what's up with this Amari talk party at Jeff's fund? Appreciate that. And Darren Georgetown is trying to send Amari to Dane's Cleveland Browns for their number 2. Yeah. Is that anything that would potentially interest Cleveland with their wide receiver room?
They need to get better at receiver. Jarvis Landry's probably on his way out. I don't think he's taking a pay cut. And so they need to get better at wide receiver, but I don't know that he fits what this Browns franchise, the front office, what they believe in. They tried to trade for a receiver a couple years ago, and it didn't work out with Beckham. I think it's more likely they draft and develop. Although I will say, the Browns have a just terrible track record of drafting wide receivers. I think the best one is maybe Braylon Edwards, and that's obviously not a good thing if he's your best wide receiver draft pick over the last 30 years.
Going back up to some of the best players in this draft, Alex wants us to rank Derek Stingley, LSU corner, Booth, whose first name is escaping me, Clemson corner, Andrew Booth, Gardner, the Cincinnati corner, Sauce, and Trent McDuffie for a zone-heavy scheme. He's a Philadelphia fan and wants you to rank those corners for a zone-heavy scheme. And I tell you what, I think the quote number 3 and 4, if you told me you're going zone-heavy, it might elevate them a little bit, because McDuffie is a freaking wizard, and I think
they play a ton of zone. Yeah, they play a lot of zone coverage at Washington for sure.
Zone heavy team, put them in order, or do you just say, hey, whatever, dude, I have my corners in order and they can all do it?
Yeah, in today's NFL, you have to play zone and man. Every defense runs a variation of both. So, obviously some will be a little more specific. I honestly, I'm very, very close with my top 3 corners: Stingley, Gardner, McDuffie. Those, and I don't feel great about that order. After the combine, I might have a totally different order with those 3 guys. I think Booth is the 4th of that 4, but the top 3, I think, is really, for me at least, is a little unsettled right now. I'm open-minded to those 3 guys. Stingley, obviously, it's hard to figure out with the medicals. It's hard to figure out with some other stuff going on. Gardner is a big-time talent, so you could make a case for all 3 of those guys, I think.
I'll tell you the thing that's interesting about Booth. He doesn't get challenged. You watch him play, and you can see there's a lot more off coverage with Clemson than there is some of these other teams that you watch. We mentioned Washington and stuff, but man, I miss working for the Cowboys when all that film was cut up for us, and the ball's coming at them every rep. Seriously. There was some serious work watching Booth play, and I'm thinking they got to throw at him. But man, the movement again, the flexibility, the pedal, all this stuff. But I kind of see, on the outside, there's a lot more zone than there is that man stuff. And he looks, I think everybody that was mentioned can do it. I think they can play both. But he probably played more than any of the corners that you guys mentioned in that ranking, from what I saw.
And I feel like McDuffie was doing so much dropping into what looks like a 3 deep
Sure.
or whatever, and
with, they press bail. That's what they run.
Press bail, exactly.
Press bail into cover 3.
Yeah, and then with Sauce, it's like, all right, they're just never going to throw at Sauce Gardner, and so I too miss the days where we could pull up a player and Bryan would just be like, all right, here's every ball at him. All right, here's every run at him, and it's just like,
we were living right, weren't we, guys?
Yeah.
I mean,
now you have to actually watch every play and just be like, all right, I see how he moves. I see how is he going to do anything?
Yeah.
But eventually you'll get there and it works out.
Sure.
Want to shout out my guy Skywalker Steele, our guy, friend of the broadcast.
He is. Good dude.
He just sent me a send-off case of cold beer on him and said, great stuff. He's looking for a mid-round safety. Also, check out Skywalker. He's an incredible on-air and production guy at A to Z Sports right now. They hired him and on his own channel. And I can do that now. I can promote whoever the hell I want. Because
hey, let me ask you this. Like, okay, you mentioned mid-round. Dane, what about our guy McKinney from Oregon?
Oregon? Yeah. Local kid for you guys, Carrollton.
I've actually been up to, I'm going to cut Dane off and just offer about 2 seconds worth of things. Verone McKinley, Oregon. I bet he's a day 3 guy because he's going to be, quote, small and, quote, slow. So, like, I think that he's, and I've gathered this from talking to people who have worked with and are working with him, that he's going to be like, coaches are going to love him and fight for him. And he's a smart player and he's a good player, but they're going to be like, he's also a slow, small, not big hitting safety.
Yeah.
That's tough.
And I don't think he's like, it's not like, he's not going to run a 4.8, he's probably,
it'll be a 4.6.
4.64, and he'll be right around 200 pounds, 5'10" and a half. Yeah, it's not ideal measurables. But yeah, he's really instinctive. He's a smart player who understands what the offense is trying to do. He might be a little small, but he plays big with the toughness that he plays with, the compete skills. Just watch the Oregon State tape. I mean, he got under the skin of that team. So he's an interesting guy that I agree. He'll be there on day 3, but I don't think he'll last very long once we get to day 3.
See, to me, this guy, when you watch him play, there's a lot of turnovers in his game. I mean, positioning, fumble recoveries, he's always around the ball. And, there's something to that. There's something, if you have football intelligence, smarts, positioning, you can kind of make up for things that you lack. I mean, I like I say, we watch these safeties play and you're like, well, he might not be the guy that has the best range of this, that, but he's always around the ball. He's always trying to make a tackle. He's always the ball kind of comes to him. I mean, just a ton of interceptions with this guy. If you watch him play, ball skills are outstanding.
Christopher wants to know, surprise in this year's draft that nobody is talking about. And then he just said, FYI, Brandon Smith is a beast. Is that the Penn State linebacker?
Yeah. He's going to have a big week next week.
Physically, he's a beast. Yeah, I think he'll have a great combine. I'm watching him on tape, and I'm just like, I'm not sure if he has any idea what he's doing. But, man, that dude looks really good in the uniform, and he can run fast and stuff. Well, mine's obviously Sky Moore. The biggest surprise in this year's draft is going to be –
By the way, I got a text the other day from a scout who told me, don't be surprised when Sky Moore runs a sub 4.43 40. Apparently that's how he's been testing. So
I didn't even know. I wouldn't have guessed that he would be fast. I would have guessed that he was a 4.5 flat guy.
I agree. But no, he's been testing in the low 4.4. So let's it'll be interesting to see exactly what the final number is. But don't be surprised if he's pretty fast out there.
Just more money for my guy. And you, like, Dane, you've got Trayvon Walker, who you've said you're higher on than a lot of people, but also it sounds like the world's kind of catching up to that.
The world's going with you on this one, Dane. Yeah.
Do you have a guy later on that's like your guy? Because I also know Bryan's guy. Go Tigers.
Let's see. I've got a bunch of guys, I think. I mentioned how I really like the interior offensive line group. One guy that I think, like, if you don't go with Linderbaum in the first, if you want to get a center in, say, the 3rd or 4th round, Luke Fortner from Kentucky, to me, that's a guy to go after. He played all 3 interior line positions in college, And how about Kentucky cranking out these offensive linemen?
Sure.
They've had at least one offensive lineman drafted each of the last 3 years. They'll have at least 2, maybe 3 offensive linemen drafted this year. But Fortner, to me, he looks like he's a guy that can ride out the storm. It might not always look pretty, but he'll latch, he'll control, and he's assignment sound. High intangibles. In the spring, he's gonna earn his 3rd degree from Kentucky, his 2nd master's. So I mean, we're talking high intangibles. There's so much to like about Luke Fortner. I think he's gonna start in this league. Guard, center versatility. I think I like him probably a little bit more than how he's been talked about.
Brian, give us your guy.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. I mean, it's funny because on Twitter, I get so many mock drafts. Dane, where do you have him on your board? Where is the Kentucky guard? Because people are mocking him like 5th round. Is that way late?
Round? If I'd take Kennard in the 3rd in a heartbeat.
No. Is you talking about Kennard? Is that who you're talking about?
No, I'm talking about Fortner.
Oh, the other one. Okay.
Yeah.
No, Fortner to me is 3rd or 4th round, somewhere in there. He could very easily go top 100.
Okay, because people keep mocking him like in these mocks I see, and he's like on every single mock, and he's like the last guy. Yeah. And I was just like, because I haven't seen the player myself, and I didn't know if that was actual or that he needs to be up in a higher.
I'd be shocked. I mean, like that's a guy that I'm probably higher on than most people, but I think that I know there's some NFL teams that agree with me. So maybe he slips a little bit just because, again, we're talking about center, which is not every team needs a center. Not every team's comfortable drafting a center in certain places. So maybe he does slip a little bit, but I think it's more than likely he goes 3rd or 4th round.
Yeah, my guy is. I don't know why more people aren't talking about Ed Ingram from LSU, and I know I went to school at LSU, and this is not my get on the soapbox and talk about LSU and players and all that stuff like
Brian,
that.
you and I will fist bump together on him going in the 2nd round. Like we got into it about him versus Zion Johnson and which one. Like I like Zion better, but whatever. Ed Ingram, I think his tape says absolutely in the 50s. Give me.
Yeah, I think the thing about that was with Ed. I mean, there are questions about what happened to him when he was 15 years old. And, you start talking about
he was 17.
Well, this, again, talking to folk at LSU about it, trying to tell me when things started, kind of the timeline of things for Ed Ingram. And, it's something that people will dig in on. It's something that they will ask him about. There's something about it that he will be very forthright about. And I don't feel like that people – will like once they get his explanation about it, I think that they'll have a better understanding of what happened with that situation. So again, kind of take care of that. I think the thing you have to talk about Ed Ingram is, though, when you visit with the LSU folk, that he came back. He came back to play. And everybody was like, well, why did you come back? And he felt like he's like, listen, I owe this to the university to Coach O and what they did for me. They stood by me in a difficult time and all that, and they talk about the character of the guy. Yeah, the off the field stuff, they'll figure that out, but they'll also talk about the things when he was playing, what he's able to do. And I see a really, really powerful player. Now, I talked to some scouts about him, and they're like, listen, maybe there's not the knee bend. Maybe there's not the second level stuff. Maybe there's not, there's things they kind of ding about this kid. But I watched him play against Texas A&M, and I watched him get to the second level, and I watched the ball go, past him when he's blocking and stuff like that. So I do see some knee bend. I see a guy that doesn't get knocked back. I see a pass blocker. I see a really strong guy. I mean, that he could deal with, it doesn't appear that he was struggling with any quickness or issues with people over him. I mean, I'm watching A&M. I'm watching Alabama. I'm watching legitimate defensive lineman play against this guy, and it's not a struggle for him. So I kind of say Ed Ingram, LSU, I know it's my school, but man, I don't think people are talking about him near enough.
I think that's fair. I think he's my 5th guard. Mm-hmm. I've got Kenyon Green, Zion Johnson, Kennard, Sawyer from Georgia, then Ed Ingram. So I like him quite a bit, not quite as much as you, but I do think he's a future NFL starter.
B. Rich had a couple of Cowboy ones. He said, your personal preference aside, Broaddus, do you find it plausible that Mike McCarthy is a big difference in the Cowboys draft approach in 20 and 21? I don't think he's really he hadn't really even wanted it, has he?
No,
Quinn had a lot of pull. I don't think McCarthy's pushing for players.
Yeah, I think that what you have with Mike is not used to being part of the process, because if you ever look at the way the Green Bay system worked, and they've done this for years. Brian Gutekunst has carried it on, with the coaching staff and stuff. Ted Thompson, he had McCarthy in the war room, but the coaches really weren't superly involved. So this is a whole new thing for Mike McCarthy to be able to talk about players. There's a couple of places that McCarthy went. I think he went to Kentucky to watch those guys work out. But yeah, the big influence from what I understood was Dan Quinn. When Dan Quinn came in, he was like, okay, I'm going to go to State College, Pennsylvania. I'm going to go to Lexington, Kentucky. I'm going to go to Corvallis, Oregon. He went coast to coast, really looking at all these defensive players, and then had his input for what the guys that he got from Atlanta as well. So McCarthy input, yeah, I'm not going to discount it, but it's something that's totally foreign to what he's ever been able to do as a head coach.
Two quick ones for Dane. Yeah. Josh Paschal, better as an edge or a DT from Pull Up then?
He's an edge. He's not super explosive, but he plays the run really well.
Who is he? Where's he from?
Kentucky. Okay. A bigger 6'3", 275, that type of guy. Intangibles are ridiculous. Overcame cancer while he was at Kentucky and all this stuff. But not a super explosive pass rusher, more of a really stout run defender. Is going to be a base end rotational player. Just a third, fourth round pick.
Taj wants to know, would you draft Kyle Phillips in the top 100? Who is he?
The UCLA wide receiver. The way he had an outstanding Shrine game. He's kind of that the Hunter Renfrow type, where a little undersized, going to live in the slot, but man, he catches things, he gets open. I don't know that he's going to get top 100, but I think early day 3, good chance that's where he comes off the board.
Clayton wants to know, Bryan, what pick would make you throw your pen? And is this a fake pen throw or a real pen throw? The fake pen throw?
No, I tell you what, I'm the way that these names are coming off the board at 24, the names that we're starting to see, I don't think there would be any fake, I don't think there would be any fake mad or I would be upset though if some of these guys, like I say, if guys like Linderbaum and Green and, our linebackers all start going off the board, I think I would start getting a little nervous. But if you give me a shot at some of these, a wide receiver, a safety there maybe with Dax Hill, I don't think I could be too upset about it. I think any direction that I'm focusing really on the Cowboys right now in this. I know we're kind of a national type show, but I know for the Cowboys aspect of it, I think they would be pretty happy with maybe what's going to slide down that board to them.
Man, Dax Hill, I love that.
I love Dax Hill. I love Dax Hill. I do. I absolutely do.
Let's keep that bandwagon going because I love that.
Yeah.
Sean wants to make me merch. Go ahead and email me. I'll allow it. UNMD says, who do you like out of Petit Frere? That's the Ohio State tackle. Tyler Smith. Is that Tulsa? And Tulsa. Braxton Jones?
Southern Utah. Tyler Smith. Have you guys watched Tyler Smith at all yet?
No, but I have to. I hate it, but I got to watch all these stupid offensive linemen. I thought after I watched the first 8 of them, I was good. It turns out you have to watch all of them.
Tyler Smith is he's young. He's a redshirt sophomore, one of the youngest players in the draft. 16 penalties last year. I mean, this guy is so sloppy, but his flexibility is impressive. His redirect skills are impressive. He can anchor at shallow depth. He will maul you. He is so nasty with his hands. The grip strength's ridiculous. He plays with lightning bolts in his hands. It's really fun to watch. He needs coached up. He played left tackle at Tulsa. Maybe you move him inside to guard and then move him back outside to tackle when he's ready. It's hard to know where to draft a guy like this when he's so incredibly raw and he needs time to get better with his technique before he's going to be ready to face NFL competition. But the power, the movement skills, the competitive temperament, it's all amazing with Tyler Smith. So I think that he goes probably somewhere in the second round when it's all said and done. But he's tough to peg because he's going to need time.
People want to hear about an Adam Anderson evaluation. And if I remember right, that would be the Georgia guy who's got the R word situation. What is that? Allegation something?
Two allegations. Yeah. He's not getting drafted. I mean, football is on the back burner for him right now.
Yeah,
So
there are like things that he's having to deal with right now that are probably going to keep him from, like Dane says, getting selected at all.
And he would have been a first round pick. He was a first round talent. But because of the situation, which I'm not qualified to speak about, I don't know enough of the details. We'll have to wait to see how everything plays out. But yeah, he's not getting drafted. He won't be part of this class.
Vance Williams wants us to compare and contrast Devin Lloyd and Nakobe Dean because he knows that I'm a big Nakobe Dean fan and have him as linebacker 1, but is seeing so many different places, Devin Lloyd being the first linebacker off the board. And so I will tell you, I would not be surprised if Devin Lloyd's the first linebacker off the board. If I had to guess, I would bet that he is, because prototype, because of 6'3" and long arms, and like, he's a really, really good player. I got no problem with Devin Lloyd. You get him at 24 to the Cowboys, and I love it. I think it's great. I prefer Nakobe Dean because I just think that he processes football at light speed, and it's incredible the number of plays that he makes and trying to get his teammates in the right spots. And he can fly, he can hit, he can cover. You're missing out on that trait that Devin Lloyd brings of being a bigger, longer guy, which can help you in coverage, playing off blocks. I prefer Dean. I totally understand people who prefer Devin Lloyd. I don't fight people on that one. I just go, okay, I get it. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Do either of you have a big preference on those two guys?
I have Dean above Lloyd, and I have a feeling that the scouts are probably going to have that flip just for the reasons you gave, probably because of the 6'3" and 1 6 foot. But let me tell you what, I'd love to have either one of them. Seriously, I mean, they're that. Again, there's a difference in height, but as far as getting to the ball and tackling and doing those things, there's really not very much difference between the two.
I think there's like 12 or 13 spot difference in my top 100 between the two. Preferring Dean or preferring Lloyd over Dean for me. The size, I think that does matter, especially when you need to sift through all the traffic in the middle of the field. That's something that Dean plays so quick, both mentally and physically, that he can combat that. But at the same time, there are times where he can get hung up, and so that lack of length could be the difference between going top 10 and going maybe somewhere in the top 25.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Sully, for hanging out with us tonight. I appreciate you guys. And finally, Marcus wants to know Bryan. He's 24 years old and he enjoys the draft. How does he get his foot in the door at an NFL front office? Have a last name that's the same as an owner, a GM, or a coach?
Yeah, that all works. It all helps. Yeah, I got very fortunate because my path went from college recruiter to NFL Europe to guy I worked with at NFL Europe, having to work with Ron Wolf at the Packers. And he told me when I took the job in 1990 in NFL Europe, he says, "You're going to be really good at this. I'm going to get you a job in the NFL." And a year later, he was right, and he got me that job. So yeah, my recommendation is, again, these programs are hard to get into. They don't have the interns and stuff like that they once did. So it's kind of difficult. But the route I went was the college recruiter and then NFL Europe. I mean, we got the USFL stuff. We've got all these things that maybe you could get involved with. Maybe you can get involved with your local college team or stuff like that and work in recruiting. And that way you meet scouts. You meet guys that are on the road, and you can kind of, people can say, "Oh yeah, I remember this guy from this school. I remember this guy." I think that's the best way to go if you can. It's tough. It really, really is. I'm not going to sell it as being easy, because here, Dane Brugler, one of my dear friends, I think he could scout with anybody in the National Football League. I know he chose to do what he did, but Dane and I've had this discussion. We first met about how to get in and stuff like that. And he'll tell you, it's just not the easiest path. And now he's probably got 1,000 friends in the NFL that he interacts with every single day. And it's a difficult task. It really is.
No, and it's funny because the NFL was always the goal, but as I got, closed door after closed door, and then I finally got an opportunity, and then finally it just became, the media was better for me. But yeah, you have to create your own path. You have to find a way. For me, it was my draft book that helped me kind of separate myself, and that got me That got me an interview with the Green Bay Packers when I was 22 years old with John Dorsey and McKenzie and all those guys, your boy Schneider, Bryan. And, there were jobs that I didn't get that I was heartbroken. Interviewing with the Patriots, didn't get that. But interview with the Chiefs, got that job. I ended up not taking that. So, it's something where you have to find a way to separate yourself. For me, it was my draft book and, sending that out to every team that got me noticed, and that helped me. But just like every prospect, your path's not going to be the same. You're going to take a different path. So you just have to figure out what's best for you and play to your strengths and go get it.
And for all of you out there, if you enjoyed the daily fantasy, by the way, I would go to Underdog Fantasy, use the code JeffC, get you a little promo bonus on the sign up, do over-unders, maybe some best ball. I like the over-unders. I like to parlay like $2 and pick like 8 of them and see if I can get filthy rich. JeffC at sign up, Underdog Fantasy. All right, men. Good week. Bryan, have a good one. We'll do it again.
Thank you. Look forward to it.
Dane Brugler, have a good one. We'll do it again.
Always enjoy it, gentlemen.
Plug and Play episode 3 in the books, and we will hit you with Plug and Play episode 4 coming up next Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. Unless I'm running into something weird with. Don't worry about it. We'll see you when we see you. And normally it'll be Wednesdays